to go from one thing to another, meaning that the notion of things existing as a clock does not exist. Now, you ask yourself, how can existence be without a notion of tick-tock, or a notion of period, or a notion of vibration, or a notion of up and down? Well, let's put it this way. Vibrating things spend some time being off and then some time being on. So what that means is that the experience itself is not full. It's alternating or oscillating between off and on, so that it's not a full experience. And that's what the digital reality is. It's not a full experience. There are gaps. Now, if the rate is so fast, you will not notice the gaps. You would think it's a continuous stream. And quantum physics really is a kind of statement that says that nature itself is somewhat digitized. Now, like I've always told people, all of these are perspectives, because at the granular nature of everything, what you have is the primordial consciousness. All right. And it is an infinite expression that is always the same. It's always one thing. And that in concept space, which is its K pattern, which is its projection, the first projection out of itself, it's an infinite expression, so that you can capture that infinite expression, the relationship that exists in that infinite expression, as a distribution of prime numbers in the sixes, because the sixes control where every prime number is. And you understand that prime numbers emerge out of the operation of division. Okay? Now, the operation of division and the operation of multiplication, they are duals to the operation of subtraction and addition. I mean, multiplication is just a faster form of addition. Okay? Now, so you have these two categories of basic mathematical operation or basic arithmetic operation. But that's a duality. And every duality gives rise to the possibility of contrast. And when you have contrast, it means that there is now what you can only describe as a potential difference. Now, the nature about duality is that people tend to think that duality is just a comparison between one thing and another thing. That's true. But if there's a possibility of one thing, then there's a possibility of another thing. There's a possibility that there's nothing. So instead of just two things, you have three things really, as a minimum. You have the neutral, then you have the possibility of something, and then you have the possibility that there is not that thing. So you have -1, 0, and 1. But that's the same way you have the prime numbers. You have 6, then you have 5 and 7, where 5 is 6 minus 1, and 7 is 6 plus 1. And that's the way every prime number is. Every prime number sits adjacent, either positive or negative, to a multiple of 6. That's how the sixes control the distribution of prime numbers to infinity. And so what nature does in organizing the universe, because the universe, the physical universe, is an expression of the original hidden enfoldment that exists in the primordial consciousness as the primordial consciousness. Those enfoldments are the things that unfold as a physical universe. You know, it's like some material is structured in a way that is completely hidden and it's nothing, and then it begins to unfold, and all those enfoldments, all those structures within it now begin to unfold as a physical universe, so that the laws of the physical universe, the laws of nature, represent the enfoldments and the structures that are in the primordial consciousness, the way the primordial consciousness is, so that the physical universe really is some type of approximation of the primordial consciousness. Now, the way that the physical universe organizes itself, of course, has to be in relationship to the way that the primordial consciousness is. And so the way it is the primordial consciousness that organizes the universe. And then it is that organization in the universe, you see it as the distribution of those prime numbers. So that the physical universe itself is organized according to the prime signal, which is the infinite distribution of prime numbers, the sixes. They organize everything in the universe, everything. Because that way, every natural complex system can be simplified. And the only reason why that is the case is because it needs to be an expression of the same thing, the thing that is common to every single thing, all aspects of the universe, up or down, in or out, whatever dimension, are the sixes. So that the entire thing is an expression of one thing. That's beauty. It's just that when you look at the physical universe, you struggle to see that beauty. And so the return to paradise is the return to being able to see the beauty that is right in front of our eyes by understanding the relationships that exist between everything. And once we're able to do that, we begin to dispel ugliness because it is the nature of ignorance. That's really what it is. So when I say the world is ugly because it contains all these things, it's because people are caught up in silos. Consciousness has distinguished itself, has separated itself into all these tiny little silos. And in those silos, everyone is experiencing their three-dimensional space and the way that space vibrates as time. And everyone is experiencing the limited form of knowledge because you don't know anything. And then because of that, you don't know what anybody else is, so that you experience yourself as a total isolation. And because of that, you are afraid. Now, the asymmetry that exists in knowing is what is responsible for anxiety about the future. But the reality is that the human soul doesn't know what a past, present, and future is because it never had to deal with these things before. So it now begins to intuit that this must be the nature of the physical experience. And as a result of that, the projections are very poor. Hardship, difficulty. You need a system to allocate resources. You have limitations of resource. The soul doesn't know what a resource is. It doesn't know what a limitation of resource is because it doesn't know any of these things. These things are alien structures, so to speak. But you need to understand that they don't exist outside of the self. You are looking at the self. The state that it is currently in is typified by that ignorance, by that fear, by that anger, by that hate. The need for war and conflict, and you are looking at the soul, the state it is in, and it is in a very sorry state because that is not its natural condition. So there is an additional pain attached to the physical pain. And so why would a soul want to be on that level? Well, doesn't want to be on the level. But there's some people who want to maintain all human souls on that level because for them they have decided that paradise is not a thing. Now, the only reason why they make that decision is because they are falling much deeper into ignorance than everybody else. That's really what it is. So the Medu Netcher, right? They are descriptions and interactions with what you call nature. Because today, when we understand the law of nature, we write it as a mathematical equation. It doesn't really mean anything beyond the production of technology. And I've explained to you that the need to produce technology is tied to the demands of white supremacy. The need to dominate. The need to uphold a fraudulent reality. A reality that is completely unnatural. So you need weapons to do that, because it's going to breed conflict. The conflict is not external of the self. It is the condition of the soul as it has chosen to be in a state of what? Pain. And that's conflict, because the conflict is with yourself. And then you project that as an external reality, as people that you want to fight, people you want to dominate, and people you want to conquer, people you want to enslave. But what's really... Listen, there is nothing. There is no external reality. So what's going on is a very private narrative in your head. But because there's nothing, the only person being enslaved or the only person being hurt is yourself. And reality has no choice but to conform to those narratives, whether you are aware of it or not. Reality does not care about your ignorance. Because you project everything. So if you're projecting the aspect that you know, you're also projecting the aspect that you don't know. And it doesn't care whether you don't know. It's all projection anyway, because you are immersed in a reality system. You see yourself as immersed in a reality system. But there's no reality, there's nothing really. Okay? And so the soul is always constantly trying to get out of this. That's what it's always trying to do. And when you see the laws of nature as we write them today in mathematics, doesn't really mean much, because we don't know the average person doesn't know what to do with this. You can't go home and sleep and and except you're a physicist or something who's thinking about their career or something, and be contemplating these laws. You don't use them to talk to your friends, except maybe you guys are part of the study group or part of the research group or whatever. What I'm saying is that the way these things are described today, they are disconnected from the human. But the Medu Netcher do not describe nature that way. There are still aspects of behavior of the universe, but they are anthropomorphized, meaning that they are given human characteristics so as to anchor what is being understood to reality. And the reality is that there is nothing out there. There's no nature you're really looking at. You're looking at yourself. You're just looking at another variation of yourself, of which there's an infinite expression of these variations. So the Medu Netcher are a language that is used to communicate with different aspects of the self, which the individual now perceives as nature. They are the remembrance that says that, don't forget, this nature you're looking at really is not outside of you. It is you in a sense. And it is not disconnected from you. And that is a memory, an inkling of memory from paradise. And when people began to externalize the whole ancient African civilization in Kemet that people talk about a lot these days, the only reason why I think these people gathered to build this thing is because they began to forget. So it became important to put these things down, in stone, not even in paper, because paper would degrade. Paper wouldn't be here in 1,000 years. They put the damn things in stone. Because human consciousness cycles over great time. I mean, we don't know what 50,000 years is. We have no idea. We're telling ourselves the stories that says that a few thousand years ago, there were hunter-gatherers just dropping out of, just becoming comfortable with their awareness to start farming and all. We tell our story as if this thing we are doing right now is the first time it has happened. It's a lie. Human beings are very old on this planet, and I've told you before that there is good evidence that suggests that Black African civilizations are 78,000 years old. Now, I'm not saying all Black Africans. I'm just saying that there are certain aspects of the Black African population that have civilization in them the last 78,000 years or so. That is 3 equinoctial cycles. Okay, that's a long time. And some people will say, yeah, so where's the evidence in terms of they didn't build what? Complete your sentence. They didn't build what? They didn't build skyscraper. You think your skyscraper is going to be here in 5,000 years? You think, that's the funny thing people talk. People talk things that they don't even understand, because these are not time periods that we can map into our personal experiences. For us, a long time is 20 years. I'm talking about 78,000. What do you think is going to survive 78,000? What do you think you're building now that's going to be around here in the next 10,000 years? Nothing. That's why they built with stone. Everything else is likely degrade. It will be consumed by the earth, one way or the other. Time. Especially vast amounts of time like this, we don't know what those things are. And you people talk about, look, ancient Rome, the way it was described and the way it's described, there were it was a city, it was an entire civilization, right? There were lots of things. People were living like they were living today, like the whole world was densely populated. Where is all of that? When some relics like that are discovered, it becomes an important archaeological site. But these things are not everywhere, and yet this was a city that was bustling, and that's how long ago? 2,000 years ago? Or thereabout, who knows? I'm talking about 50,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. The Sahara is a desert right now. That is the entirety of North Africa, one end to another. Complete desert. It wasn't always a desert. 6,000 years ago, this place was completely green. Rivers and lakes and mountains, and maybe not mountains, but lakes and puddles and streams and grassland as far as the eye can see. And prior to that, it was more densely populated. It was more densely populated from a vegetative point of view. So that Africa looked nothing like it does today in terms of, the covering and all that. But all of that is now buried under desert, under sand. Have you excavated that desert? Have you removed all the sand to see what is beneath? Of course not. I'm talking about this civilizations dotted everywhere around that. They came together at some point in time, all of them, representatives from all of them, to build that ancient Kemet that everybody talks about, that the Arabs now occupy and claim it as their own. Yeah, sure. Of course, the Arabs have nothing to do with it. They don't know what any of those things are.